Welcome to the Scariest Things podcast, your gateway to the trends and tropes of the horror genre. This is Mike Campbell, and with me tonight,
as always, Eric Lee.
And our extra special guest from New Orleans, who is now an extra special regular from New Orleans,
Liz Williams.
There
Hi,
she
guys.
is.
There she is. I was like, oh, crap,
Sorry.
Liz ditched us.
I thought you were going to give me
that-
more accolades. I
After
was
that
waiting.
great send-up and then no Liz.
Oh, God.
So, Mike, what do we got this
This
week?
is a special. This is a special episode. This is an episode. This is my bridge too far. Or I don't know what the euphemism is, but this is a subgenre I have never been interested in. I have never really touched upon. I've seen lots of films in this subgenre,
Right.
but I've never really dove into it. It has never resonated with me.
So, for me, it was cannibals. For Liz, it's zombie movies.
Hillbilly horror. For me,
Hillbilly horror.
For me, it's Dracula's.
The vampires. We're
We're
talking vampies.
Weird.
talking vampires. Vampires.
So kicking and screaming, we dragged Mike into this one. It's like, come on, buddy. It's about 1/4 of all the horror offerings out there.
Well, this is what I will say. I think I think only zombies rival the breadth of film and subgenre of horror film. I think only zombies rival
Slashers.
vampires. Maybe
I'd agree.
slashers, but slashers is such a broad topic.
Yeah.
It's so broad. Vampires, it's like you got to have a vampire in the film. But it's like when I started doing the research, I mean, obviously you go back to 1927
Nosferatu.
with Nosferatu, and you go all the way through Twilight and beyond. You know,
and beyond.
30 Days a Night,
And beyond.
I mean, I challenge obviously anybody to go look up like the top 100 vampire movies, and you won't find a top 100 list. You'll find a top 500 list.
Right. No,
'Cause
it's a gargantuan one. I was
my God.
tempted to do a dead list, and I was like, God, where do I stop?
There's too many.
Well, and where do you start too? That's the thing. That's the thing, because it's like the Nosferatu of the 1920s, 1930s. The original Dracula is very different from the Hammer Draculas from the 50s and 60s, which is very different from the Werner Herzogs of the 1970s, which is very different from
The Fright Nights.
and the and the Twilights, and so they're all very different and distinct.
Your Blades.
The Blades, yeah, and that's why I say I think it's only rivaled by zombies.
And I think that zombies it's sort of back. It's back heavy. It's contemporary stuff, because I think you would go through. I mean, you had a white zombie and I Walked with a Zombie, but really, it wasn't until Night of the Living
68,
Dead, and then that cracked the egg.
Yep.
And
Right.
then it was prolific zombies from then on out, with a particular bent in the last decade, been oversaturated with zombies.
Right. The one thing I discovered, of course, Liz, what does America love? What are the two things America loves?
Oh,
Beside from
I don't know.
not Donald Trump and not the NFL, it's sex and violence.
Yes.
It is sex and
Oh, yeah.
violence, and Dracula movies are chock full of sex and violence. In fact, it kind of dawned on me, which is, a little simple, a little vapid, but you can't really have there's really no other subgenre of horror film where the evildoer is the sexy one and actively engaged in the act of sex. I mean,
we keep coming back to these sexy thrillers.
I know,
That's gonna have to do it.
I know, but it's like, but vampires really are like they're the only sort of evil protagonist monster character that are actively involved in sex in a reasonable way.
For the most part.
Yes.
For the most part. I mean, there's
species.
There's examples. There's there's like little spots of examples here and there throughout the genre, but it's like vampires are the only ones.
Well, and I think it is actually the fear of sex is something that certainly plays, it's the kiss. I mean,
right.
But with fangs,
right?
Right. And whether you are there's an aristocratic air about a lot of vampires. I mean, then you got the Nosferatu freaky, icky vampires,
right.
But like. Even though Bela Lugosi is now quite campy and arch,
right? He
was regal at the time, and certainly Christopher Lee and Chris Sarandon,
right?
And you get these imposing, elegant vampires, and of course all the Twilight sparkly vampires, right? Sexy vampires, and then that '70s trend of bosomy, sexy lesbian vampires.
Yes,
right? That
is wholly Italian, though.
No, that was British too.
Well, that's true. Some of the Hammer stuff. Yeah,
there was Ingrid Pitt, right?
Right,
she's very British and very bosomy and very vampire.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
Hooray for her.
Yep. Well, the other thing too that kind of dawned on me, you were talking about the sort of this kind of weird relationships vampires have with sex. Mm-hmm. The other thing that's kind of weird is that there's also sort of this subtext with regard to like the women who become vampires, and then there's sort of this it's like sort of fear of women's sexuality. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, this sexuality is like, it's very aggressive, it's very violent, and oh my God, that's like doubly frightening because I don't know what to do with this woman, and this is a terrifying thing.
And I think that there is certainly a strain in vampire movies that attracts a female audience. Mm-hmm. I think of all the horror genres, the vampire. And I think Twilight's a great example, where it has a huge female audience and a small male audience,
right?
But there's something romantic about it. There's that gothy, almost shoegazy kind of aspect about it.
Oh, for sure. Well, because it's some immortal being who like wants you out of anybody else throughout time. That's what teenage girls eat that shit up. I know. I was one. Like, thank God Twilight wasn't around when I was a teenage girl. But don't worry, we'll get to one of my teenage girl favorite vampires.
Yeah, I know what's coming.
Don't you worry.
All right, so Mike.
Yes,
I will. Let's give you the honor since you're the squealy kind of not very vampire.
No,
actually, wait before we do this.
Yes,
let's go through.
And I did not pick Blackula, even though I love that. Or I did not pick Blackula or Scream Blackula Scream, even though I love both those movies.
Wow, that's too bad. I was kind of banking on you doing that.
I watched.
That's all right.
No joke. I watched, I think, 11 vampire movies in the last 2 weeks.
I watched 5. Wow. But I didn't have to catch up as much as you did.
I had to catch up something
awful.
So let's go through what I think that the standard, what we would consider that most vampire movies do.
Okay.
Absolutely, they have to drink blood.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And that they have to be undead. Correct? Or that there's vampiric tendencies.
No, because they get just turned.
I actually have one that isn't, but that's...
I do too.
Okay.
Probably.
You're right, Liz. Yeah, there's that contagion is another aspect of it. And in that way, it shares a couple of bloodlines with zombies.
Right.
Passing through some sort of a viral thing and also being undead. Mm-hmm. But eternal is something.
Right.
A lot of them, daylight is bad.
Right.
These are creatures of the dark.
Wooden stake through the heart.
Stake through the heart's a classic. Garlic sometimes.
Sometimes not.
Bat sometimes.
Sometimes not.
Holy water.
Holy water.
Oftentimes, but not always.
Ability to fly. Yep.
But these are now, I mean, it just tells you how invested our culture is and vampires.
Well, and you spoke of Bela Lugosi earlier, and I think it's fascinating to think that, here is a guy who was Romanian, Hungarian, something like that, who copped this Hungarian accent, and 40 years later, Sesame Street was picking up on it.
1, 2, 3.
And even after that, every single kids vampire, and even
Count Chocula,
some vampires to this day still have a Hungarian accent. So, I mean, I think that speaks volumes for the cultural impact that Bela Lugosi had with this one character. Yeah. And what was really fascinating about that too was that they took a huge risk on that film, because that was the year in 1931 that came out alongside Frankenstein, and that was you were at the apex of the Great Depression, and the thing, part of my research yielded, which I thought was really fascinating, was that part of the risk that they took was that everybody was convinced that, which I mean is slightly anti-Semitic if you really dig deep enough, but everybody was convinced that the whole reason the market crashed was because of external foreign forces.
Xenophobia.
It was xenophobia, and what perfect muse to roll out this Hungarian monster, and that's you can direct all of your anger and frustrations towards that specific thing.
I do think that it's interesting that that every culture has a vampire sort of in its storytelling lore. I think A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night.
Yep.
An Iranian vampire.
Super good.
You got the hopping vampires of Spooky Encounters. The classic, the Hong Kong, ghouly vampires. That it's not just. You got From Dusk Till Dawn.
Yeah.
You got some
vampires.
Latino vampires.
Yep.
So it's a multicultural kind of a. Bloodsuckers are feared throughout, and they all do have some of these kinds of. They're hiding in the dark. They're shadowy figures. All of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Now that we've established that, we can get rolling.
All right. I'm going to start with a film that it won the Tribeca Film Festival Award in 2008. It won the European Fantastic Film Festival Federation's Golden Award. It won the Best European Fantastic Feature Film. It won the Guldbagge Awards from the Swedish Film Institute and the Saturn Award for the Best International Film. This is a film called Låt den rätt komma in.
Yeah.
Or let the right one in. This is a film I had not seen when we did our
really?
top 100, and I came in the 40s, I believe. Might have even come in the 30s, and I think I was rightfully chastised by Eric for not having had seen it. Yeah. And it is one heck of a film. And it's a very simple film. It's a young boy who's being bullied in what might be a tenement or a housing type project in Sweden, maybe rural Sweden.
It's Stockholm, actually, or outside the suburbs of Stockholm.
Maybe suburb, yeah. And a young girl moves in next door, and he, of course, is enamored by her. She is enamored by him. Hijinks ensue.
Yeah, but she's a strange little girl because she's
a vampire.
Well, it's a Swedish winter, and she's out there without a coat, and she smells funny.
Right. And she's got very dark circles under ours, like she's maybe having some difficulty sleeping.
Yeah.
He only sees her at night.
Yeah. She can mysteriously appear in his window on the third floor of their apartment tenement building.
Yeah. And it's the thing I really loved about the film, because I'm not gonna perseverate about the whole story, save to say it really kept me guessing the whole time, and every time I felt like, I kind of know where this is going, and it's not that altogether that interesting where I thought it was going. It went in a completely different direction. So many times throughout the course of the film, it went in a very different direction, and even the close of the film, which is kind of a sort of a action-oriented scene where the young boy sort of gets his revenge on kids, the neighborhood kids that are bullying him.
But it's not. He doesn't get to enact the revenge.
He doesn't enact the revenge. She enacts the revenge.
It is spectacular.
Yeah, it's really spectacular.
Yeah.
It was very shocking. Apparently, the director Thomas Alfredson, he said he used about 50 different shots of CGI, even though he was somewhat reluctant to use CGI. He wanted to make sure that her movements, looked different. Mm-hmm. And that when she would fly or move or she would jump off the play set in the courtyard, that it would look very different and look very unique. And he wanted to make sure that he brought that to her. And even there's a scene where a woman who's been infected by the young girl is attacked by a bunch of cats, which sounds ridiculous. And she ends up looking like, and I think it obviously The Simpsons in so many ways predates so much of pop culture, but it looks like the crazy cat lady on The Simpsons, where she's got like 12 cats hanging off the side of her.
No, that was crazy.
Yeah, which was all CGI, but it looked really wonderful and really wonderfully done. So yeah, I can't recommend Let the Right One In enough. It is a vampire film. It's a decidedly different tone than a lot of vampire films. I mean, Eric was talking about the sort of the aristocracy and the sort of the regal orientation and kind of the sexy, these sexy qualities of the vampires. This has none of those things.
No, it's a little girl.
It's a 12-year-old girl.
It was filled with emotion. I mean, this is one of the most heartfelt horror movies you will ever see. It's
oh my gosh, yeah.
From on my list, because I hadn't seen this when we'd done the top 100.
Yeah.
Either, but it didn't take long. I saw it.
Mm-hmm.
I saw it last year, and it stunned me. I thought it was it would be on my top 25 now.
No, I don't think it made my top 25. But I liked everybody raves about the little girl. I actually liked the little boy better. I thought the
little boy is fantastic.
Oscar.
Yeah, Oscar. I think he was more, to me, he was more interesting than her.
He's very compelling, and as you know, a lot of the times you end up having that kid be the straight kid, right? Playing the not a particularly, the dynamic character is going to be the vampire,
right?
But he's fantastic. And the kinds of things that he does to try and gain her favor, he fails.
Oh my gosh!
And he tries, and it's so sweet.
He's
and the Rubik's cube, and
yeah.
But he's an awkward little boy, and it. The fact that they found two excellent child actors.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's something else when you get one Linda Blair playing Reagan. When you got two kids who were at the top of their game.
I did read a little bit about that process, and it took them quite a while to find those kids. Yeah. I mean, it took them a long time, and I think she was called back like 5 different times because they were not sold on her.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, it does take a lot of work to get that done. I will say I am going to go watch the U.S. version because I'm very curious to see what they did with it.
I've heard it's good.
Yeah.
But it was like Rec and
sure.
What was the Quarantine?
Yeah. Quarantine.
Yeah. And so they're again classic.
It's pretty much exactly the same thing. It's I don't know. I don't think it was.
I think though, isn't it?
Read the subtitles, America.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Absolutely.
There's no reason not to watch the first one.
There's
it is
no reason to remake it.
Yeah.
Right.
In my opinion.
All right. Liz, what do you got for your number 3?
So I followed my 3 picks are going to be for different age groups. So this is for the kids, and this one was recommended by my 6-year-old nephew Jackson. He says it's his favorite, and it is Hotel Transylvania from 2012.
Speaking of Bela Lugosi,
yep. So we have the Hungarian accent, but this time it's Count Dracula being voiced by Adam Sandler, and so it's actually very cute. So for any of our listeners who have kids who want to start them out. This is, vampires have appeal for all ages. So in this one, Adam Sandler is Count Dracula, and after losing his wife, who was voiced by Adam Sandler's real wife, to an angry human mob, Count Dracula builds a 5-star hotel that's going to be for monsters only in Transylvania to keep humans out, and where he's going to raise his kids. And in this one, it's his daughter, Mavis, who is Selena Gomez's voice. And she is celebrating her 118th birthday, but they're kind of doing like an 18th birthday party. And she wants to go out in the world to explore the human world, but he doesn't want her to do that because he's afraid, what happened to his wife is going to happen to her. So he gets these zombies who are like the bellmen at the hotel to dress up like real humans and scare her so that she runs back into the castle. But at the same time, kind of like a stoner surfer human named Jonathan, who's voiced by Andy Samberg, gets into the hotel. So now there's a human running loose in the hotel, and they're trying to get him out, but the chef, who is Quasimodo, voiced by John Lovitz, learns that there's a human in there, so he's trying to catch him. Yep, he's trying to catch him to cook him the whole time. But Mavis meets Johnny, and she falls in love, much like Twilight, and they end up living happily ever after because there are 2 more Hotel Transylvanias that you can watch with your kids.
And there's another one coming out next week.
There's a series on Netflix, too.
That's right. Yeah.
So have you taken Hank to see?
He has. Yes, we have seen one of them. Okay. Yeah, we've seen the first one. Yeah, I mean, and the Scariest Things podcast is your gateway, emphasis on the gateway to the trends and tropes of the horror genre. And this is like the pure definition of gateway.
It is silly and fun. I particularly like Blobby.
It's super fun. Yeah. And according to my nephew, the third one's the best because they go on a cruise. So if you want to take the dream vacation of a 6-year-old, it's Count Dracula's cruise ship, I guess. So excellent. Just a fun way to start it out. There's so many vampire movies. It really is, I mean, since the 20s till now, all different age groups, all different types. So this is kind of akin to the Count on Sesame Street. I mean, little kids are seeing a vampire at the beginning.
Yep.
So
absolutely.
That is for my young viewers.
Okay.
Hotel Transylvania.
And he's not, to be clear, he's not a sexy vampire. If people are looking
not
for
a sexy
vampire cartoon, this is not a sexy vampire.
Okay.
He's more maybe
I'm sure they have
kind
those
of maybe
Japan.
foolish. Foolish.
Yeah.
He's very silly.
So my number 3.
Yes.
I guess this is the first really major reboot of Dracula. This is 1958's Hammer Dracula.
Oh, I picked this one too.
Oh, okay, a collision.
Because this is like the most true telling of the Dracula story.
Absolutely. I think this is. I think the startling thing is actually how little Dracula is in this one.
Right.
Right. And actually how little Christopher Lee got paid to do this. Apparently he was paid £750.
Right.
And the movie made £25 million.
Yes.
After all was said and done, after all these years. Needless to say, Christopher Lee did fine.
Yeah.
After this.
Well, yeah. Because he played Dracula about 100 more times.
But he is, I think, he's handsome and intimidating and powerful and scary, and at the same time he's regal. Mm-hmm. I think the thing is that he's got that great voice, and they didn't. He only had like 16 lines,
right?
And then in the whole
second, it mostly follows Jonathan Harker. I mean,
Van Helsing. It's Peter Cushing as Van Helsing. Jonathan Harker shows up, and then he gets.
Well, yeah. I mean, the whole first act plus is all Jonathan Harker,
right?
Yeah.
And then Harker finds
the latter half is Van Helsing, yeah,
right. And scattered in with other, you have Mina and Lucy Holmwood replacing Mina Harker from the 1931 Dracula,
right?
And no wedding this time. Was there a wedding there was a wedding this time. Yes. So they in a nice kind of 1930s homage.
Yeah.
You have that classic. You got to have the wedding in there. But some great Peter Cushing sort of acting as almost like his Sherlock Holmes
Right.
thing where he's the detective and he's this smart, arrogant vampire hunter.
Well, and he's providing counsel to the family, and basically telling them, here's what you got to do, and it's great because it's like it reads like a checklist of all the vampire stuff. It's like, okay, you got to close the windows. Step 1.
Right.
Step 2, you got to put garlic everywhere. Right. Step 3, everyone's getting a cross.
and yet. Yeah, some of them don't pay close enough attention.
Well, at one point, Lucy says to like her maid, she says, "You got to get this garlic out of here. Yeah, it's driving me insane." And open up the windows.
Hint.
Yeah.
This is an absolutely gorgeous movie too. I think this is. Yeah.
Did you watch the Blu-ray?
No, I watched. They had, I think, Amazon has it available, and it comes in 1080. So it looked great.
You got to get the Blu-ray. It's really amazing. They did Warner Brothers did like a full digital restoration in December of last year, December of 2018, and the Blu-ray. So like all the color that you're talking about, and all the great Hammer set design, because it's all, it's none of it's shot. It's not shot in Transylvania.
No, this
spoiler
is on
alert.
Shepperton or something like
right.
that.
The colors are so vibrant, and the now very, very famous scene where Christopher Lee, jumps out to stop the other vampire. And his eyes are just like completely bloodshot. Yeah. His mouth is covered in blood. Yeah. No, that scene is just so amazing.
It completely reset the notion of Dracula because you have to remember that the teeth had been taken out of the count through things like Abbott and Costello meet Dracula, and Plan 9 from Outer Space. I mean, you just had these kinds of. They've been defanged, and all of a sudden, you bring him back in '58, and he's scary.
Well, and if you go back to the original Bela Lugosi Dracula, there was no teeth.
No,
there was no neck biting because the censors feared that it was going to be like considered tantamount to like penetration. Like if they actually saw like it would be like, oh my God, you can't show somebody like sinking their teeth into somebody's neck.
But that is the vampire thing, and that's I think sexy vampires.
Sexy vampires. Yeah.
So Liz, have you seen the '58 Dracula?
I have not. I guess if I went like classic Dracula story, it would be what's the one from the early 2000s with Gary Oldman and Keanu Reeves?
Oh yeah, Bram Stoker's
Bram Stoker's Dracula. That was Coppola.
Francis Ford.
Gorgeous movie.
Oh my gosh, was it ever?
That would be my classic Dracula one. I don't watch the oldies.
Yeah,
guys.
I know. I'm just needling you.
I love this. It was. I liked it. I liked it for a couple of reasons. One, as I mentioned earlier, it was like this is a super true telling of the original 1872 novel by Bram Stoker. Yeah, this is it. This is that story, and Christopher Lee is amazing in the film.
Yeah, and so this is
also that.
What's that?
I do need to watch that. I think that's
it's good.
A blind spot I gotta fix.
Yeah, because I think, and this is where you kind of want to start with Hammer. This was Hammer's third movie. You had Quatermass in the Pit at first, and then you had Curse of Frankenstein, and then you had Horror of Dracula. And this one was the one that cemented Christopher Lee as an icon.
Oh my gosh.
From here on out, he did Dracula more than Lugosi did.
Yep. He did the Satanic Rites of Dracula. He did Dracula AD 1972, which was the groovy hippie Dracula.
Was that the one where he just went the whole time and didn't actually say anything because
he was pissed.
He was upset about the
he thought
script.
It was garbage.
Right.
Dracula AD 1972, by the way, is actually kind of, it's groovy. I liked it. I watched it. It was groovy. Satanic Rites of Dracula, which is the sequel to the hippie Dracula AD 1972. Not that good. Yeah. Don't see Satanic Rites of Dracula.
No, Horror of Dracula. That's your sweet spot.
Yeah, Horror of Dracula. Great movie. 1958. Check it out.
So now that I've stripped out one of...
I'm going to my number one.
All right.
This is good because we want to get done
All right.
fast tonight anyway. Number one film is the 1978 American psychological horror drama written and directed by George Romero and stars John Amplas, who didn't do much else. Martin follows a troubled young man who believes himself, and you were
This is
asking
Martin.
Yes, you were asking the question. He believes himself to be a vampire, and this is George Romero's 1978 film. Martin, also internationally known as Vampire. Yeah, Vampire, and in fact, Goblin did the original version of the soundtrack to Vampire.
Okay, but it didn't show up in Martin?
Well, Vampire, aka Martin.
Right. No, I was asking whether they had a European cut and an American cut.
There's a European cut that you still can't get in the US apparently. You can only get it.
So the US one doesn't have the Goblin score?
That's what I was asking.
Yeah. George Romero says this is his favorite of all the films he worked on, which is really interesting. Wow. And I had seen it probably like 20 years or so ago, and I remember liking it. And then when I went back and rewatched it, it's almost a flawless film. I mean, it's an amazing film. It basically just follows this young kid, Martin, who is shipped out from the Midwest to, of course, the ghettos of Pittsburgh to stay with his cousin. His cousin is this religious fanatic. He's an older guy, Kuda, and Kuda is convinced that his nephew is a Nosferatu, and even with that said, he still hooks him up with a job. He still tries to integrate him into the community. He introduces him to his daughter and his daughter's boyfriend, played by Tom Savini, and the local priest, played by George Romero.
Nice.
Who said you can't cast all of your friends in a movie?
Was Dario in this?
No, Dario was not in it. Okay. Although it was hot on the heels. It was like they must have like just finished this up and then immediately started working on Dawn of the Dead. The other thing was interesting too about this film is that while even though a prosecution didn't result from the film, it was seized and confiscated in Great Britain under Section 3 of the Obscene Publications Act of 1959 during the Video Nasty Panic. So basically, the film is interesting because it plays with time and space a lot, because there's lots of back and forth, and there's a lot of interesting edits where you don't know if you're looking at something that's happening, if it's a dream sequence, or something that has happened to Martin. In addition to all of that, Martin himself is going through all of these different crises, both sexual crises, sort of familial crises, as well as psychological crises, because he doesn't know if he's a vampire, although he is obsessed with drinking blood. And of course, he abstains from using his teeth to gnaw apart somebody's neck, and instead injects them with some barbiturate, and then he slits their wrist, and then oftentimes drinks the blood from their wrist. And to me, what it really highlighted was the tragedy of vampires, sort of the emotional draw of the vampire, and really just kind of the mundane complications of being a vampire, and like how tough it is to be a vampire. Vampires are not sexy. It's not fun. It's kind of a tragedy, and you're like stuck with this thing forever. And Martin is convinced that he is one of those people that is stuck with this thing forever. As the film goes on, he eventually contacts a local talk radio show, which again is incredibly prescient on the part of George Romero, because that's what he did, was be very prescient with his writing and everything else. And the talk radio show, quickly hones in on the fact that this young kid is a nutcase and thinks that he's a vampire. So they of course dub him with the moniker the Count.
Nice.
And so and so he calls in on a regular basis, basically seeking sort of sexual advice from this radio talk show. Like, how do I get with girls without having to kill them?
Yeah, what a combination.
Yeah. The film, George Romero apparently, and I did just review this on the scariestthings.com website, and I mentioned this in the review, but apparently George Romero wanted a close to 3-hour version of this, all in black and white.
Whoa.
And there apparently has never been, but there exists apparently at all. It's never been released, but there is.
Someone go find that, cut that, edit it, and put it out there.
Seriously.
I know there's a 3-hour version that is all in black and white, but of course the producers, they prevailed and said, George, that's not reasonable.
I'm sure that in this day and age, if you get someone like Vinegar Syndrome or one of those Blu-ray producers, and maybe they can get their hands on it and do an extended cut, and that would sell. I mean,
I think it would. Oh, absolutely, 100% it would sell. Yeah,
particularly for we saw those guys at the Overlook Film Festival, right? They had some of the most spectacular schlocky films that have come and gone, but they also would do things like Martin.
Oh yeah.
So
Martin is a great film. Maybe the best vampire movie ever.
And you can check out Mike's review on the Scariest Things website.
Yes. All right, Liz, what do you got?
So my number 2 is going to be for teenagers, and this is 1987's classic and one of my top 25, The Lost Boys, directed by Joel Schumacher. So, I don't care. You guys can just give me shit on this one all day long. I love it. So I was like 11 when this came out, I guess. So probably 6th grade. Mm-hmm. And me and my friends were obsessed with this. It's Jason Patric, Kiefer Sutherland, Jamie Gertz, Corey Haim, Corey Feldman, and Jason Patric and Corey Haim play Sam and Michael, 2 brothers who are moving from Phoenix to Santa Clara with their mom to go live with their grandfather. And one day they're at the boardwalk, and they're at an awesome saxophone metal show with the saxophone, and he's all oiled up playing this ridiculous song. And Michael sees Star, played by Jamie Gertz, and she's just like a hippie and so beautiful, and she has this amazing hair. And he's like, oh, I'm into that girl. But her boyfriend is David, Kiefer Sutherland, who's like a biker dude. He has this super cool spiked blonde hair, and he hangs out with these other quote unquote cool looking guys, with like their one earring and their
eyeshadow
band leader jackets and things like that. They're hairspray. They are
Poison was very
the Poison
big.
Version of vampires. But Michael likes the girl, so he's got to hang out with these guys. And then he discovers when he goes to their underground lair.
Oh, so that underground lair is cool.
The underground lair is cool. It was opened up from a fault line underneath the town, and it had been an old hotel. But so he doesn't get bit. He drinks blood.
That is, by the way, the most believable part of the film.
Probably. He drinks blood and then is slowly becoming a vampire. First, it's just he has to wear his sunglasses in the house. Then it's that Corey Haim's dog, Nanook, doesn't like him and bites him when he's trying to kill his brother. And then Sam and Michael figure out what's happening to them, and they have to fight off the vampires, and they come to their house, and that's just a no holds barred, ridiculous fight. You've got garlic, holy water, crosses, everything. Meanwhile, Sam, the little brother, has to enlist the help of the Frog Brothers, these 2 ridiculous, little militant kids who run a comic book shop.
Corey Feldman.
Corey Feldman is one of the Frog Brothers, and I do not know the name of the other actor. He is not super famous. And so they help Sam reading vampire comic books to fight off the vampires.
Wasn't it Alex Winter from Bill and Ted?
Alex Winter is Marco, one of the vampires.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, he's the vampire that gets staked first, so he does not make it. Maybe he had to leave early for Bill and Ted.
I knew you were going to talk about this, and I was I went back and rewatched the trailer, and I was like, holy shit, that's the guy from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. I forgot he was even in this. It was pre-Bill and Ted.
like stars at the time. And if you want to talk about like, they're not really like sexy, but for like teenage girls, they're teenage vampires. They're like 18, 19, 20. They're sexy for the 80s. I don't know if like right now you would see them and be like, those guys look cool, but
poster material. These guys were on girls.
I had the poster.
Yeah, there you go.
That was my second question. Did you indeed have the poster? And
I did. And I was a Kiefer Sutherland fan. It was either like Jason Patrick, because he was very sensitive and brooding and like becoming the vampire, or Kiefer Sutherland, who was like cool and the leader of the pack. That was my jam. I love Kiefer.
Big 1-2 punch. He did Stand By Me and Lost Boys.
And then Flatliners.
Yep.
Yeah, but
which is kind of horror
It
adjacent.
is. No,
it is sort of horror. And it's the same kind of thing. It takes the biggest stars of the day. It's Kiefer Sutherland, Julia Roberts, that really good-looking Baldwin, and puts them in that horror situation. But so Lost Boys holds up. I can watch it no matter what. If it is on TV or if I walk by and I just see it, it's going to be on. The soundtrack is, I said it on our speed round, one of my favorite soundtracks of all time. All the songs are good.
Name the songs. What are your favorite songs off the soundtrack?
Cherry Pie.
So the soundtrack has like
by Warrant, Poison,
Echo and the Bunnymen, Covering the Doors.
Yeah,
it has
People Are
NXS.
Strange. Yeah.
Yeah, it has that Cry Little Sister, which I don't know who it's by, someone who sounds like Corey Hart. Then it's got that song, I Still Believe, that is the guy who plays, everybody just calls him Sexy Sax Man. And he was like a down and out like musician who they just put on this thing, and it kind of launched his career into like, now he's like an internet meme. So great soundtrack, super fun movie, really quotable lines, like with the Frog Brothers, they say to Corey Haim, like he's kind of freaked out by them, and they're like, you need to pray. You never have to call us. Like talking about the vampires.
Right.
Like, I'll pray. I never have to call you because they're weird. But, just all sorts of fun quotes. If you are a person of a certain age who grew up in the late 80s, early 90s, and especially if you're a girl, Lost Boys probably has a place in your heart. So maybe it's the timing of it all, but it will always be one of my favorite movies.
All right.
No shame in that.
Send us a DVD.
But I'll still shame you.
Yeah, send us a DVD.
Yep,
we'll give it a watch.
Mike can watch. You can show it to your boys and see what anything's at.
I would be curious. I'd be very curious to see what they thought about it.
Because it's not there's a sex scene, but by today's standard, it's not.
It's pretty tame.
Yes.
It's pretty tame. Yeah.
I will say, going back one film, I did show Horror of Dracula to the boys this weekend, and we went out the next day, and Hank is going to be Dracula for Halloween.
Yes!
Yay!
All right.
It worked.
Hank.
It worked. All right, Eric, what do you got?
Okay, so for my number 2,
Yes.
I am also going with a human who thinks he's a vampire. And this is more of a kind of like a mentally ill kid, probably. This is The Transfiguration from 2016.
Oh, never even heard of it.
Where it's a movie directed by Michael O'Shea, starring Eric Ruffin as Milo, who's this odd little, he's a teenage boy, but he's troubled. He lost his mother to suicide, and also lost his father when he was young, and so he's being raised by his big brother, who is played by Aaron Moten, who plays Lewis, his older brother. And they're growing up in the tough part of the Bronx. And he's this kind of goofy kid who likes himself some vampires. He's got old VHS tapes of all the classics. He's got...
But he is not a vampire himself.
Well...
Is he like Martin?
Yeah, he's going out there...
Maybe vampire.
He's going out there and attacking people in the middle of the night and biting their necks and drinking their blood, but he's puking because he's not really a vampire.
Right.
He's a messed up kid.
Okay.
Who's going around just, and what he does is he finds like a homeless wino.
Uh-huh.
And just like and hits him, clocks him, and then
that might be redundant, but sure.
Yeah. Well, there was another. Actually, Larry Fessenden is a kind of a looks like a homeless guy, but he's one of his victims. He goes into his house and attacks him, and it's because it's like he's a skinny little he's like might be like 5'4",
right,
and he's awkward looking kid. But he actually falls in. He meets this other this girl, Chloe Levine, plays Sophie, and Chloe Levine was also she's the lead in The Ranger. So if you recognize that movie, but she is dubbed she's the white girl by all the neighborhood kids. But she has suicidal thoughts, and so the two of them sort of bond. Sitting around in the wasteland that is the South Bronx, and they share their lonesome upbringings, and he shares his love of vampires with Sophie, and she admits to liking Twilight, which he dismisses as not being real enough. Real vampires don't sparkle. For the first time in his life, Milo has found a friend who knows he's crazy and still embraces him. Which is aw.
Yeah.
So, and eventually, though, his darker secrets begin to slowly emerge, and Sophie gets a little wary about his behavior. He starts coming to terms that he can't set all things right in his world, and manages to tie all of his ongoing issues into one clean plan. The bullies and Sophie and vampirism. He's got it all figured out, and he will reveal. The reveal of the master plan at the end is weighty and it's earned.
Right.
So I think that this came out of the Cannes Film Festival in 2016 and created a whole bunch of buzz. But it's
got a great poster.
Yeah.
The poster is really, really cool. We may post that online. Yeah. But the thing is, Michael O'Shea this is the only film he's ever done.
Yeah. Well, I mean, granted, it was only 3 years ago. So he's got. But we've got a lot of those kinds of directors where it's like. You wonder when the director from Raw is going to do another movie, or when the director from Babadook,
right?
These are
she's got something coming out this year.
She just did one,
or just did one,
yeah.
But I think there's a lot of these kinds of things where that these indie directors that they get some cred, but they still don't have financing,
right?
That's
I know.
Where'd you find this one, Eric? Is this streaming?
Yeah, no, this is definitely streaming on Amazon.
Cool.
Okay.
I think.
Oh, great.
So it's
The Transfiguration
2016.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. So that's my number 2. Moving quick. We bypassed Mike.
Yes, I'm done.
Because he's out tapped.
Okay. Is it me? I'm going with number 1. So this is for the adults. This is going into super sexy vampire, super violent vampire, and this is the HBO series True Blood. It ran 7 seasons from 2008 to 2014. And it is the story of. It's based on the Southern Vampire series by Charlene Harris, and it's the story of Suki Stackhouse. She's played by Anna Paquin, and she's a waitress at Merlotte's Bar and Grill down in Bonton, Louisiana, and she falls in love with a 173-year-old vampire named Bill, and she knows he's a vampire because he's Bill.
Young hunk.
Yeah, and because vampires are out in the open and living amongst humans because there's been a synthetic blood developed called True Blood, so that the vampires don't have to murder people anymore. They can drink this blood.
Is that really the story?
However, of course, there's always going to be that little.
That's really the story, Liz?
Yeah, that's really the story.
I didn't realize that.
I think you can buy. I think they were selling cans of True Blood down in
oh yeah,
Louisiana.
It comes in like a can in the show that looks like a Monster Energy drink or something.
Yeah, right. And it's I think deep red fruity drink. I think.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I got to get off.
I was making up. I could have been writing these books, huh?
I know. Jeez.
Other people who work at the restaurant is Sam, who's a shapeshifter, Lafayette, who's a medium, Tara, who ends up being a witch. So we've got this one runs the gamut. We've got, then we had the werewolves come in certain seasons, and
you always have to have the werewolves.
Yes.
Yeah.
Whether it's Twilight or Underworld or
What We Do in the Shadows.
Yeah, because actually the number 1 and number 2 things apparently that I actually had one of my colleagues talking about this to me today of what do when women do online searches for sexy things. The top 2 things are vampires and werewolves.
Well, it's coming from True Blood because you've got as a the guy who plays Bill is Stephen Moyer. He's very handsome, and he and Anna Paquin are married in real life. They met on this show.
Ah.
But the sheriff of the vampires who are living in this area is Eric, and he's played by Alexander Skarsgård, who is an incredibly attractive guy.
Yeah,
but
he's
when
the handsome Skarsgård.
werewolves come in, it's Joe Manganiello.
Joe Manganiello. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't say his name. He's super hot. So on this one, I'm going to go with the werewolves. But this show is really, really bloody, has lots of sex. This one's not for the kids. And throughout the season, shapeshifters, werewolves, fairies, witches, mediums, vampires, you run the gamut of the supernatural realm. And it is ridiculous. It would be kind of quoted as one of those like guilty pleasure kind of shows. It really has no redeeming value.
Still going?
Except it's super fun.
Is it still going?
I think they closed
No, it ended in 2014 after 7 seasons.
Okay, so how many episodes is that? I mean, they're doing like 15 a season or something like that.
Let's see. There was like 12
Okay.
per season, except for the last 2. So
that's a good run.
yeah.
Yeah,
Pretty good run.
If we're IMDbing it, Anna Paquin was in 81 episodes.
Woo!
Yep.
Good
so then
run.
she
I
was
was gonna say 80.
She was
but
in them all.
Wow, that's a lot of.
It's really, really good and really, really fun.
That's a lot of Dracula right there.
Yes. Well, it's got all sorts of stars in it too, and they take them out of the Eastern European and put them in the bayous of Louisiana. So
there's something about New Orleans and vampires.
Sweaty down here, I guess. It makes everybody. Oh well, New Orleans is a super vampire city.
And Rice.
So,
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lestat's from here. Now these guys are from here. It's the humidity.
All right. Good segue because Eric's going to talk about his man crush, Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise.
Interview with a Vampire. No, I actually have one that actually the tagline for this thing is actually some interviews with some vampires. And this is and with that it's the comedy, one of my all-time favorite horror movies. It's in my top 5. 2014's What We Do in the Shadows.
Yes.
Jermaine Clement, Taika Waititi, Johnny Brew, Corey Gonzalez, and Stu Rutherford.
Yes.
This is, I think I've described this before. Where
did this come in our top 100?
Oh, I don't know. You're gonna have to get on the IMDb while I'm talking here.
Well, yes.
Or not the IMDb.
Yes.
Just check the Scariest.
The Scariest Things.
That's more important.
Scariestthings.com. 1T.
But my good friend Amy, sometimes contributor to the podcast and the website, had been telling me, you gotta watch this. It's so good. And I Amy, as much as I respect that she's a horror movie fan, we don't have the same taste in horror movies. She likes franchisey stuff, and I was like, I don't know, this might not be all that good. But
well, I know, and then that lapsed over into you saying, hey, we should watch this.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't want to watch a vampire comedy.
So funny.
But it is hysterical.
We watched it and it was brilliant.
Yeah. The best, I think, maybe the best mockumentary. Actually, I will say it's the best mockumentary since Spinal Tap. And for horror movie fans, it eclipses Spinal Tap because it's a horror movie.
Oh, for
Yes.
sure.
And
Although I will say this year's Extraordinary rivals.
Yes.
Rivals What We Do in the Shadows.
As for horror comedy, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, it goes into the first rank.
Yep.
But this is, it essentially, for those of you who don't know, this is a documentary, supposed documentary of 4 vampires living in a flat in Wellington, New Zealand. And these are doofy vampires. These are guys who they're centuries old and they still haven't quite adapted to modern life. And they've infected some locals who've turned them into their familiars who will have to clean up after their bloody messes. And they get and these
what's the woman's name? Is it like it's like Mary or something?
Jackie.
Jackie. That's
Jackie
right.
Jackie has been wanting to be turned into a vampire because she wants eternal life
And
while she's still young.
And she's like strung on so hard.
Right. And they
Yeah.
they abuse that in as far as sort of like a boss underling relationship, she just gets totally shit on.
Yeah.
But there's also some great things about the unholy masquerade that they have to prepare for, where it's all the monsters of Wellington get together and hang out. But this year, it's the special guest is the Beast, who actually happens to be, it's like it sounds terrifying, but it actually happens to be an ex-girlfriend of Vladislav, who is Jermaine Clement's character, who is this swaggering, mustachioed, winking Lothario of a vampire, and then he just turns into a total puddle of goo because he can't handle facing the ex. And there's some great things like the joke about why the attacking virgins is like eating a sandwich. It is. Right. I don't want to ruin it because I can't replicate it, but that is one of the best jokes ever.
You repeated that at one point.
I think. And there's we're werewolves, not swearwolves.
Yes,
I've talked about what we do in the shadows before.
Best.
I think the beauty of it is that they actually have a new television show on, I think, TNT, which is just as good. I was stunned, and it is so silly, and it stands on its own two legs and wings. I love it when I wish I could recall the name on an instant, but the character goes bat. And he turns into a bat, flies around.
Right.
And then it's
well, that's what I loved about the film initially, was that it leaned on and exploited every single vampire trope you could possibly think of, but in the most self-referential, self-aware, and really funny kind of ways.
Yeah, and it pays off completely in the television show when they have the convocation where there's a trial and all the vampires show up, and it's Tilda Swinton and Danny Trejo and all of the big
Wesley
Snipes, even Blade,
right? on who's Skyping in
on Skype.
It's so silly, and it's just and all the right kind of light touches of humor it's both crass and gentle at the same time. It's spectacularly done. So that's my number one because it's on my top 5 of all time, and I love me some What We Do in the Shadows.
It's a good one.
And I
totally agree.
And I'm going to throw out a one sentence little thing because Mike passed on his number one. I will. My alternate for this was Near Dark.
Oh yeah,
Catherine Bigelow's Southwest road trip vampires makes it. It's the grim, gritty vampire show,
right?
And it really that put Catherine Bigelow on the map, and
my alternate was the 1979 Werner Herzog film Nosferatu, and I really
78. Was that one 78?
79, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Great film.
Yeah.
And it was like I realized that Werner Herzog actually hit the nail on the head about why I don't really like vampires, but that one really intrigued me.
Yeah.
It's a very, very well done film.
My alternates were all 3 Twilights.
No, was it?
No way.
Okay, so grave digging. Liz, you got anything?
Yes. Real quick, and it's vampire related. Just the other day, Grady Hendrix posted on his Instagram that his new book is in the ARCs right now. So the advanced reader copies are going to be coming out soon.
Oh, you going to get one?
It is called, hang on, I'm trying to find it really quick. I was not prepared. It is called The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires.
Ooh, right. Very topical.
Stay tuned soon from Grady Hendrix. It doesn't have a release date yet, but he's got the arc, so that means it's coming soon.
I just finished listening to My Best Friend's Exorcism.
That is a great book.
Yeah, great one.
That was fun.
That is a great book, yeah. Funny book. All right, Eric, what do you got for grave digging?
Well, I just saw a movie last night.
What? It's a vampire movie?
No, and this was a movie that. Okay, so I'm going to say that Joker is a horror movie adjacent. It made I was uneasy for the whole damn film.
A lot of people are saying that. I don't buy it.
Joaquin Phoenix is just a weird. He bathed in weird sauce. It was just, and the thing that he was so off-putting, but at the same time you feel for him and you realize that he's getting bullied, and then when he goes bad, he goes real bad, and
a lot of people are saying it's horror adjacent. I'm just not buying it.
I'm saying it's horror adjacent.
Okay,
I think it has it in the same way that maybe Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer is horror adjacent. It is.
It's straight up horror.
Yeah, it's
horror.
It follows.
That's not a comic book origin story.
No, but I think I think that the Joker has been played in or has been written in the past, and I think there's like a Dave McKean book that shows off Joker as a really creepy clown dude. This is, he's the psychotic breakdown and what he does once he breaks is blah.
All right.
Yeah,
anyways,
I definitely want to see it.
Mike, you got anything?
Just one quick thing. A film that we talked about lovingly, jokingly, some time ago, and we even posted on the scariestthings.com website, The Drone, is coming out tomorrow on DVD. This involves a psychotic serial killer who transfers his mind into a drone.
Oh, God. So you're going to review this for us, yeah?
I will be reviewing
All right.
The Drone.
Stay
tuned.
I did Killer So for free also.
Yes.
Mike can do The Drone.
Stay tuned for The Drone.
All right. I think
Liz is going to take us out,
yeah.
I do. I have a tagline, and this is the tagline from The Lost Boys.
Ah.
Sleep all day, party all night, never grow old, never die. It's fun to be a vampire.
Yeah.
That is the embodiment of that film.
I live by those words every day.
Me too.